Check, check, check. All right. I had to change like 20 settings. This is a new one. All right. We are back. And, you know, I keep saying how much I love Streamlabs, and they've heard me. They've given me the juice. You may think we've lost the plot, but we have not, because we're going to skip ahead to some fun stuff. Well, not fun, but a little bit less interesting. I do want to finish the autonomy section because this is critical for simulation design. Will Wright famously built Sims 1. The autonomy was so good that you could never, as a player, be as efficient or as quote unquote good as your autonomous characters. And so because of that, yes, we have sound. I had to, I don't know. I had to push a lot of buttons this time, an exceptional number of buttons. So because the autonomy was so good, he reasoned correctly that there wouldn't be enough player engagement in order to make the game fun for the player. I get that you want a book, and I get that a book is like a food, but I want you to have a dinner and then see if we can go on a date. Sims 4 has what I would call a modular design philosophy, for better or for worse. There's a base game. It does its thing. This is a simulation in whole. You're looking at the base game right now. You can add things to it, new modules like City Life, and you can do City Life things. I actually haven't looked at all the ones because it's a lot. Friend, what are we doing? Resume your vegetable dumplings maneuver, sir. So because we have this modular design philosophy, we have another problem when it comes to simulation design. Because every time you add new content, you have to consider what effect it has on the simulation itself. For instance, if you add in gardening, and it takes a significant amount of time to garden, then you've put a burden onto the player and onto your Sims to take that into account, and they might not get to do other things. And if that amount of other things they cannot do isn't fun, we are sad as players. And this comes with a lot of interlocking systems complexity. We got these needs. We've got a bunch of skills. Over here, we got skills. He's got skills. He pays the bills with them, but not really. We have relationships. We have all of these bits that each one talks to the others. I talked about the skin of these emotions. They rub up against, for instance, Summer Holiday wanting to ask me on a date. Oh, we're going to go to the desert. She really does not like her hometown. So Summer Holiday is Esteban's main squeeze, and so they are definitely going to go on a date now that he's cooked some food. So these interlocking systems create what we call resilience mechanics, recovery loops. This is a thing that happens quite a bit in The Sims. You might get embarrassed, and you might get emotional damage, and then there are ways to get out of that. One of the fun ones is there are actually mechanics for characters to apologize or to try and downplay anything that they did that is a negative. So that's a great example of a recovery loop. You keep going with that until you either drag yourself out of the hole, or I'm not going to propose to her. Goodness. Best date ever. Best date ever. Summer, can we do date things? Oh, she heard me. Okay. What do we want to do? Kiss someone. You know what? Nope. I keep going over to propose. Let's have a kiss. Let's have a passionate kiss. We really like each other. And this is an example of one of these loops, which is the other direction, which is a positive feedback loop over and over and over again, growing from kiss to passionate kiss to woohoo, except in this game where everyone is interested in everyone and everyone wants to have friends with benefits, which is a big difference from the other Sims games, and I kind of laughed heartily when I saw it. These two are friends with benefits, even though they're madly in love with each other. And I did that because Esteban has an aspiration to play the field, so he needs to do that. In fact, he wants to wander off and chat with someone else. No, kiss her cheek, friend. Whisper seductively. You got this. You're be enticing. See, finally. So a game designer has to balance all of these things. They have to think about what the difference is between a passionate kiss, 30 points, and a kiss, which is 10 points. And whether they know all this fancy stuff I'm going to talk about with psychology or not, that is irrelevant to the actual action that they do. So I'm kind of explaining, oh boy, it also doesn't scroll down. So I'm going to assume that no one's talking because it okay. Administress. So it's not necessarily strange to have extremely fast relationships in this game, but what I think is interesting in the concept of love is exactly how the feedback loops happen and how they follow, surprisingly, some theories of psychology that we're going to talk about. So I probably should talk about, like I said, a game designer has to balance this. Things like 30 points for a passionate kiss, 10 points for a night. Where's the bartender? 10 points for a regular kiss. You know what? He can 10 bar. That is his profession. This game designer is doing these things, and so we should probably do my traditional, what is a game designer? So a game designer is a person who has an experience in their head that they want you to have. So I'm thinking of something, or you're thinking of something if you're a game designer, and then you want to try and create a way to ensure that someone else has the exact same experience as what you're thinking. Trivial? No. Is it a wonderful profession? Sometimes. Have I been doing it for 20 years? Because it's awesome? Actually, yes. But it's because of these problems that I'm still in it. And we're going to get even more crunchy about that. Because if a game designer has an experience that they wish you to have, then the first question you're going to ask yourself is, can you fail? And if the game designer, or if you do not have the experience the game designer offers, then that game designer has failed. Is that bad? Well, we'll see, actually, in this stream, if that's a bad thing for you not to have the exact same experience as what a game designer desires you to have. So let's talk about player agency and how they interact with the game. And here we have a great way to look at it. As a player, I've given up a lot of agency because it takes a crap ton of time for him to 10 bar and all the stuff that goes along with it. And apparently, you know, drinks are on the house, I guess. So as a player, I have removed my agency a little bit, but you'll notice that I'm zoomed in. I'm watching closely, especially because my date is talking with this guy who is also, I know, Carson. He is also a serial romantic himself. So, as Esteban, he doesn't possess anything, and he's actually much more interested in being nutty and talk to himself all the time. So, no harm, no foul. This is what a lot of The Sims is like, though. These changes in emotional states, these changes in relationship states. So, as a player, what are you spending? What are you bringing to the table? Well, the answer is the same every single time. There is one currency you spend when you play a game, and that is your time. That is your life. Some part of your life has been taken away by this game experience. And if you do not get a payback for that time, then you feel like you've wasted your time. You are unhappy. You don't like the game. Like Evil Genius 2. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep pounding on that. It takes so freaking long to play. And so because of that, your time is a resource. Think of it as money you can spend. Summer's like, okay, you 10 bar, buddy. I'm out of here. I'm going to have him stick around for a bit. So you're spending time tokens, right? Seconds of your life in this game. And that must be exchanged for experiences, gameplay. Sort of a busman's date night. Yeah, I think he actually enjoys serving drinks more than going out with his girlfriend. He is nutty, and I mean that in the most friendly, loving way. He wants to talk to himself all the time. So this is a good segue to another kind of economics, which is emotional economics. Emotions as a resource, as a spendable token. So in The Sims 4, you can bank your emotions through these states. Like right now, he's flirty, and that puts him into a state that allows him to do certain things well, and he can stay in this state. And so that's kind of like a resource he has. Suddenly, he's got a romantic resource. Well, let's talk to someone. Flirty introduction. Who is this? Madeline. Okay, we've seen Madeline around. So because emotions are a resource to your Sims, and because time is a resource to you, to the Sims also. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day. But specifically to you, the player, this is an interesting exchange. It's like, yen to the dollar, that we have this emotional economics. How much am I going to mess with, play with, enjoy my dolls, and have them march around, go, I'm in love, and stuff like that, versus my desire to live a good life in the real world. So it looks like I think we're going to need to take a step back and talk about the psychology of love. Because if love is just a number, it's probably pretty important that we see some things about what love is. And, if you know me, which some of you do, I am not going to just say psychology. We're going to get into it. It's one of my main interests. The book report, the bad voice acting, the psychology, and the design. That's fine. That's what I do for a living. So we're going to talk about the psychology of love and attachment. Zoop. That's my other slide. Don't worry, there's only 2 slides. I really wanted to do more slides, but at some point I have to, show you guys a video game. Let's talk about what we're seeing on the slide, because there's a lot going on. You'll notice that in the middle, we've got a couple of Sims, and one of them has a positive opinion of the, or a growing opinion of the other. The other has a lower opinion of the other. And one of them wants to woohoo, and the other one's like, no. So there's stuff going on between these 2 Sims, which is exactly analogous to stuff's that going on with you. We're going to start with the upper right, Sternberg's triangular theory of love. This guy is absurdly famous because he just went around and did what a game designer would want. He went around and figured out things about a bunch of things, like love. He did hatred. He did racism. He did a bunch of stuff. And his most famous, though, is this triangle of love. So we have intimacy, passion, and commitment. And there is this whole thing about each of those, and if you have 2, then it's this kind of love, and if you have 2 others, then it's this kind of love. There's fatuous love and all this other stuff. That's a little bit deep pool. And I want to mention that all the psychology that I'm talking about in this section is not the settled psychology that we all agree on, but they are really good frameworks for us to discuss love in a game as numbers. So what does this have to do with numbers? Intimacy. We have social interactions between our Sims, and they share experiences. When they do that, they become closer and closer together. We saw that a little bit, but actually not, with Summer and Esteban, in that they have proximity propinquity, which we'll talk about later. And see, people from Tuesday, I practiced the word a couple times. It was embarrassing. I went to college and learned all this stuff. So intimacy is about social interactions and shared experiences. Passion is represented in the game with romantic interactions, attraction systems. So passion is not just sex. It's not just touchy-feely stuff. Passion is about thinking of the other person in a more real way, thinking of another person and acknowledging that what they represent to you is powerful, and you don't, and it overrides much of your own desires. And then commitment is commitment, right? Like if you have intimacy and passion, then you don't really have love per se. You have, you might be having a lot of sex, but it's the commitment that forms the triangle that supports the triangle. And reading a script at the same time. We see commitment through relationship status progression in this game. Long-term choices our Sims make in this game. We're struggling with short-term choices. So I'm going to transition back to play for just a moment, so that way we're not too bored. But I'm going to be going over the others. But I want to come back to Sternberg's... oh boy. Trying to remember how to... Okay. Boop, boop. She always wants to go to the desert and leaves me there. Boy, that's a book title, and that's not a book. That's like a Cormac McCarthy or whatever his name, McCarthy book, and no one's gonna come out of that one alive. All right, brother, you're tired, you're hungry. Let's see if I can get you to have a quick meal of milk, food of champions, and then go to bed. Because this time I'm going to tell you to, because you're going to wander off and talk to yourself. So if we think about intimacy, passion, commitment, it's easy to do. Those are easy to put numbers to. Those are easy to concept as a game designer, because we definitely know what that feels like as a human. We definitely know what intimacy feels like, even if it's not physical. We definitely know what passion feels like, even if it's not burning. And we definitely know what commitment is like, even if it's not total. We see this in the game with my flirty guy. Oh my gosh! The second I walk away from this, which one is a book title? I'm sorry. What was the question? The book title for... did I mention a book title? Or is tonight's book report what you're thinking of? Because tonight's book report is about Embassy Town. Oh no, I was just joking. It's if it was The Road though, because that's the one everyone knows, then this street would have at least 2 cannibals, actually, now that I think about it. Hey, Sammy Chen! So Sammy Chen is one of my newest Sims. And, just asking for advice. Okay, well, Loverboy does have advice. But, we should move back to my slide. I'm sorry. So let's talk about love languages. I frequently joke about love languages, and perhaps that's not kind of me. But these specific love languages are great to try and put into a game, and we can see these things. I'm going to turn my mic down a tiny bit. What are some typical love language things? Are acts of service. And we see that when 2 Sims that like each other very much will have they'll help each other get skills by playing along, or bouncing off them, like playing chess to gain logic. They will... Oh shit! Sorry, I got flashbanged by my computer. God, this has been a night. This is the night where the most people wanted to come, and There you go. Anyways, acts of service, help with needs, skills, careers. This is a thing you actually see a lot of in this game, and I think that that's pretty cool. That that the Sims work together, not just in terms of like the big picture, but they'll do these little love language things. So needs, skills, careers with the acts of service. Physical touch is a frequent love language, and it happens all the time, and it is based upon personality. I think it's really well represented in this particular sim, and weirdly, I think it's well represented in another sim I like, RimWorld. I've been asked by one person when the heck I'm going to do RimWorld, and when RimWorld's pretty. I mean, you know, I love RimWorld. I have 1,000 hours in it, but that's a little rough. Okay, going through them. Touch and propinquity. That's physical touch. Propinquity, by the way, is adjacency, being next to someone. When I learned this in college, my favorite thing was, what is propinquity? And the professor was like, you can't fall in love with someone that you've never met because they're 1,000 miles away. That's propinquity. Why do people tend to marry people in their hometown? Because they're near. They rub up against them. They see one another. And so this, in a committed relationship, or at least a Sims relationship, creates spontaneous romantic interactions when two Sims are... Wow. Dude. Every day, every way, you're becoming a better, whatever these things are called, caterer. Okay, you need to... Oh, not 10 bar. You need to practice making drinks, so that way you can do your homework. So we have this really cool system where... What's your specific problem, sir? You're hungry, I bet, yeah. We have this cool system where two Sims who like each other, and if they become close, propinquity, for a long period of time, they will do things consistently with each other, almost as if they have an inside joke or whatever. And by the way, likewise, I have an evil Sim that we're going to probably check in on, and propinquity with her is painful for everyone else. The closer you are to her, the more she hurts you. Words of affirmation. So this is a very common love language, and I definitely know married couples who are all about this. I love you. Oh, I love you too. Just spontaneously while walking down the street. Good stuff, right? Like, all love languages are valid. And the whole reason why people look at some of them and go, what, is because they're not valid for them. So social interactions in our game, and mood effects from those social interactions, him becoming happy, scared, embarrassed, uncomfortable, all of these things, when they bounce off another Sim, it's as if we're looking at words of affirmation. This is supposed to be about love, but really it's going to be about this poor guy just completely failing to get through life. At the same time, well, I don't know, he's doing okay here. While at the same time, I'm completely failing to do a stream. All right, let's power through the next. Quality time. Of course, we just saw an attempt at that with a date. Dates in this game are all about a bit of quality time. Firewalling off two people so they can only generally interact with each other. And an incentive by the player to micromanage that through the quest system that they have here. Quality time is a big way because emotional currency and your time are the big spends. The game, this is how the game uses it. That's how the game shows you. Giving gifts. We have plenty of object interactions, and they have relationship impact. Unspoken propinquity. So this is one that I particularly like because it's one of my love languages. Proximity to someone, just staying near someone to show that I love them, and protecting them. Sometimes overzealously, I don't know. But these kind of things, are. Just checking on something. Oh, wait, I hear a phone call. Sammy Chen, all right. Come on over, Sammy. So Sammy is one of the Chens. They come from Texim, and he's the only one that, or she's the only one that doesn't wear a cowboy hat. Personal choices. So, anyways, unspoken propinquity. We have that too in this game. We will have two characters just passively grow in their relationship just because of things that happen. Oh, wow. Getting a couple Chens here. And who is this? Oh, this is not Chen. I didn't know we had another person with a cowboy hat in this city. I was confused. Let's talk a little bit about advanced relation dynamics and get this thing off of here. So the only two things I want you to think about so we can get this slide off here is transactional relationship stuff, which is bad for humans, but exactly how a game uses numbers to do things, and schema, which originally I was going to tie to an actual but controversial psychological framework, but instead I can talk about my own career and prior to being a game designer. If you don't know, the only thing I probably haven't done before I joined game design is skydive. I've been blessed with an extremely bizarre set of careers. And so I used to be a teacher, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as an advanced relationship dynamic. So love is transactional in The Sims. It has to be. These are numbers. And love is therefore about how the player can either get in the way or not get in the way. And the way to think about this transaction is right now. This is a great one. In fact, I couldn't have set this up better. We've got a Fleur d'Esteban. He's probably interested in these two women, but we have the problem of he can only woo one at once, and so he's trying to figure out which of these characters is he making the most progress on. And as the designer, as the player, I can interact with that. So let's talk numbers. We keep talking about love and numbers. So in order to have an attraction, you'll see the two bars, a green and a pink bar. In order to even have an attraction, an initial attraction, you need to get to relationship 20 out of 100. And when you do so, you will have success with some of the romance options. Now, some of these are not terribly romantic, and therefore they're not a risk. But the higher level ones, okay, we just had a failure here, and notice now that he is embarrassed. Why is he embarrassed? Because he tried to hit on Sammy Chen, even though that there is a little bit of relationship interest that was built up before. Probably we're not around that 20-point mark. And so with that in mind, every time you do an interaction, if you know the numbers, and I have 8 pages of charts that I found somewhere about that. Do I need to invite you in? Okay, no. Like if you ever need to know a number in The Sims, I finally found them all. So as a player, especially as a master player who does care about min-maxing these things, we have the option of big point interactions. Ministress, no. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is part of what we're going to talk. Well, not what we're going to talk about. So this gentleman has 2 quote-unquote girlfriends. The astronaut across the street, she's had some sort of relationship, physical or not, with 5 other Sims. And the Villigor family are they have their own sorts of things. So yes, you can definitely have plenty of relationship. However, there is a strong jealousy system, which I didn't put in here, so I'm going to spackle it in now since we're talking numbers. Whenever you do a interaction that is likely to cause jealousy. Great example is any sort of flirt reaction, any sort of romantic interaction. They're just going to chill. They're going to live in my house tonight. Anytime that there's that sort of thing, then there is a chance for an emotional response from the quote-unquote aggrieved party. So if he was with Sammy here and he did a romantic thing with Nyla, Sammy is likely to have a very negative reaction, and it probably would overwhelm quite a bit of recovery strategy that you have to do. And so jealousy is a thing to be avoided if you want to canoodle around. And jealousy is a thing to watch your own controlled sim for, lest they spiral out of control. It is, just like in the real world, it is an emotional roller coaster when multiple folks are in the mix. So at the base interaction, you have to care as a player. There's high point value things you can do. There's low point value things you can do. And the low point value things are more likely to fire off and at the early stage. So if you want to min-max, there's an entire strategy if you know the numbers. That's how we know love is a number in this game. So you have this early optimization strategy, which I really didn't follow very closely, which is build up, and then you can do the high-value interactions to get to higher levels of relationship. So intimacy can be thought of as these high-value interactions. And because they are high with risk-reward, they do represent intimacy in a very good way. What is he on about? So this gentleman is a caterer. So he works weird hours. But you need to do your homework if you want your maximum chance to move on in their career. So, sorry, buddy, you need to prepare drinks. Because these romantic interactions, jealousy, thank you, Mistress, are risky, then we have a risk-reward system which is analogous to intimacy. If you have intimacy with someone else, then you have a lot of points to lose if you break that intimacy, especially in a game like this where everything's transactional. So jealousy is also a really big deal, Mistress, in RimWorld, really big deal. And it's very fun to play with it there. So we're going to talk a little bit about commitment formation. You have to do 2 bars full to have a proper romantic relationship, a committed romantic relationship. And so that represents commitment in that you have to be strategic about how these 2 sims interact with each other. And we are going to use this opportunity to move to someone who might end up having an interesting love reaction. I've been wanting to show people this for a while who don't play The Sims. It's the most interesting interesting sex thing that I have found so far. Of course, Sophilia, the astronaut, is the kind of person who would do that. So rather than beat around the bush like I did with our lover boy, she's got plenty of juice. Let's it's 1 a.m. Never mind. When it becomes day, we're going to call one of her gentleman callers in this case, and they'll get excited. Don't worry. Because we have those 2 bars, the green bar and the pink bar, and because we have to fill them, this creates an interesting commitment, not just to what I've been talking about, where they just try and get into bed with each other and this friends with benefits thing, because that's not a commitment by definition. Instead, you have to fill up both bars. You have to be a great friend as well as a great romantic partner. So this requires you to think about one other thing, which is decay. So relationships decay, not very fast, but they definitely decay. And so if you don't try and keep both those bars up, try and be a friend as well as a lover to your committed person, then you might decay out of that relationship. So this is a great analogy to how we handle commitment. I'm going to pause here. Young lady, you need to weed and harvest everything. She grows all the food in the neighborhood. She's a heck of an astronaut. Okay. So how does this apply to the game with players? You're trying to accumulate points, and there is decay that you have to think about. And there's a threshold. We are now friends. We are now lovers. We are now married. And so all of these are critical to balance and balance well. The numbers behind this make the player feel the romantic relationship. As always, I'm kind of brushing up against what I'm actually doing for my day job, because my focus is on relationship mechanics. As part of the game economy. Sorry, I'm not doing the relationship mechanics, but I am administering them and balancing them, because we want to make sure that when a person gets to a certain point in our narrative, that they are at the point that we want them to be, both numerically and story wise. She wanted classical music or romantic music. Romance music. Easy points. What is she doing there? She's going to talk to a plant. That's a sign that I need to take some control here. I don't have... Oh, I need to... Sorry. I need to listen to some romance music and not talk to a plant. So this goes back to something that was mentioned earlier that we talked about, which is multi-relationship management. Not even necessarily in love, but if you have 4 people in the family like the Chens, they have to do a lot of work. In fact, they don't really leave the house and talk to other people much, because they have to do a lot of work with each other. They're all siblings. They're not married to each other or anything, but that doesn't matter. There's still a lot of work that they have to do to maintain their relationships. One of them is a teenager. She has kind of a special path that she needs to go down because she's a teenager, and since she's a bodybuilder, she's actually doing things that are completely different than everyone in the house, because one's a writer and one's a business person and the last one's a caterer. So when she goes out for a jog, or when she is working out, there isn't anyone in the family to back that up, and so I have to manage relationships in a different way. All right, chum. Is it? No, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. So there's no one to talk to. What are you going to do? What are you going to... Let's have some autonomy. Wash your hands. Okay. That's the equivalent of punting, but well done. So multi-relationship management is with this pile of numbers, is all about trying to find a way to keep numbers up that naturally would be dragged down. Jealousy. And that is a challenge for the player. The player frequently, or at least some players frequently, try to game the relationship game like I do. And then some people, you know what, if you're going to be that way, let's go fishing. And as a player, you're going to want to mess with that. And so some master players can break it. And what happens when you break it is analogous to something else in our book, Embassy Town, which is going to happen with the book report. We're going to talk about one more thing, schema development. I used to be a Montessori guide, as they're known, which tells you a lot about actually what the job is. I was also their science teacher because I like science. We know that a child, as Montessorians, we know that a child is not taught, or at least you can talk at them, but they aren't actually taught until they decide that this is an interesting thing. So the way we think about a child is as a self-constructing building. And our job as educators is to build a scaffolding around it, so that way we kind of keep the child learning things that are useful, help the child find their place in the world, help the child discover what they want to learn. Are they good at math, for instance? In Montessori, we don't push that. If you're good at math, you'll know, and you'll want to do more math work. We don't have to go too far down that road. There's obviously a lot of things that we have to do because we are educators and there are state requirements. But achieving those state requirements is actually quite easy. Good job, Toll. Oh, a voodoo doll. We've been waiting for that. For no reason. No reason. So what is a schema? Schema is that for all of us. And it's a good way to think about a human. The schema is the scaffolding around a person. And that schema is, you can say this person is an astronaut. And within that schema is much more than being an astronaut. It's a childhood, it's fears, it's loves, it's interests that are not astronaut related. And so this schema actually is what makes up the package of Sephilia Arete here. She is more than just an astronaut. She is more than just a woman who plays the field. She is more than just a woman who really likes fishing for some reason. But the package of that, the constructed schema, is how we talk about her. And why is this relevant? Because if I know your schema and you know my schema, then our relationship influence upon each other is pretty clear. I'm going to skip a bunch of... Well, I'll mention generational trauma is modeled in The Sims, weirdly. And the way it's modeled is a tiny bit debatable. But think about this. If you are a Sim raising a child, the child requires certain things to hit certain milestones because everything is a number. And if they do not hit those milestones, they basically become a crappy child and eventually a crappy adult. And if that crappy adult marries someone and has a child, there is a good chance that that child will not have as good a childhood because there's a crappy adult trying to manage them. And so that's a way to think about generational trauma. I don't want to minimize what it is in our outside the simulation world, but this is a way to think about it in this game. So, what's another thing I always talk about? Theory of mind! With its guest tonight, simulation theory of cognition. So, I actually believe strongly that you are not a real game designer unless you have sat down and thought about a couple of these things. And by the way, I'm not saying that you should think about them in sort of this highbrow method, but I think you should think about the sort of concepts around it all the time. Like all of the time when you're a game designer, and especially when you're thinking about simulations and you're thinking about interactions. So we'll start with theory of mind. So theory of mind, simply put, is the ability to recognize that another person is an independent entity with their own thoughts. So it's pretty obvious, but if you think about little children, they don't have it. That's a struggle that is their struggle, but sometimes the parents think it's their struggle. Again, children are going to grow up. Your job is scaffolding, not to freak out that they don't quite understand that people are people. But it is important. The theory of mind says that I can have empathy only if I understand that you are an entity independent with your own thoughts, your own life within. And every culture attacks this differently, but every culture does the same thing to construct their children. There are certain things that you have to do to have a well-constructed child, and you begin with, I can recognize that another person is having an experience, and I can empathize with that. I can start to have emotional reactions because of how they're living, not just because of my own desires to have emotional reactions. The sentence I always like is, there go I. And I think about that a lot. If you see another person fall down in the street, There go I. You understand what that's like. You understand the pain. You understand the frustration. You understand the humiliation. These are all things that are part of theory of mind. These are all part of what makes a human a human. I want to show you something, Ministress. She's got 3 fish in her pocket. She's got 99 carrots, 99 onions, some mushrooms, a bunch of potions, because apparently this is a fantasy game. A voodoo doll. I mean, she's an astronaut. She can carry everything. And we're going to harvest all again. When does she work? Because can I leave her? Oh, 2 days. Yeah, I can leave her. There go I. It's just a nice thing to say. And like I said, every culture attacks this differently, but every culture has a person end up the same way. And, you know, that one's obvious, right? Can you think of a culture that has no concept of other people being independent? Well, no, unless you're in a China Miéville book that we're going to discuss tonight. So the theory of mind is very, very closely related, and I often conflate them with the simulative cognition theory. So the simulative cognition theory is pretty simple, and I bang on about it probably every stream. And what it means is this. I am currently simulating reality in my head. You are currently simulating reality in your head. We are simulating watching a simulation. If you do not believe me, let us try this. Think of a beach. Think of how warm that beach is. The sand between your toes. Palm trees in the distance. Oh, look, a coconut. If any of that registered, if you see it in your mind's eye, then you have just simulated a reality. And we do it all the time, every second of our life. And once you start to think about this simulation, you probably should have a lot more questions about the real world, which is good and healthy, because you should always be questioning and skeptically analyzing anything that anyone has ever told you. But let's think about this simulation again, hardcore. Because you and I are constantly simulating. Are you thinking about taxes? Simulating a reality. Are you worried about taxes? Simulating a reality. Are you scared that when a car went by and you can imagine what it would be like to be hit by the car? Simulating reality. These realities exist inside our heads and often don't go out of them. But this has everything to do with the dolls that we play with. Well, it's not necessarily visualizing, Ministress. It's having this construct in your head, even with that condition, or not condition, even with that reality in your head. It's, you know, you're still simulating realities. You can still be nervous about having enough money for rent. You can still be concerned when there's no eggs on the shelf that you'll never make a quiche again. So, yes, I mean, and I totally understand, because this comes up every so often. And I think the individual ways that we experience reality still always has simulation as its primary component. Because you can't even really, like, I'm going to go to the store. Well, you're in your head, you've got all this stuff that you're simulating. And you know, without it, you wouldn't really have this concept of going to the store. Like, for instance, in my mind's eye, I can think of where I would get into the car. I would think about how I would drive, etc., etc., etc. Oh, her boyfriend is thinking of getting together with someone else. Okay, well, she's not jealous. But this is a good time, even though she's low on energy. Let's call him. Bring him over. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted to do. I do not know how to operate this machine. You know what? Zool, let's go have an adventure. I want you to think about a dog for a second. Do dogs simulate reality? Do they have an inner life where they are worried about things? Do they have an inner life where they are anticipating things? Do they have an inner life where they want to be more of what they would like to be, but they can't? Simulation. Dogs can simulate, and they simulate in a way that is absolutely unknowable to us. Like, there's no way for us to ever understand fundamentally. The one I like to bring up is cats. Cats are completely unlike you and me. Cats are sensory platforms. They're just high value sensors, just covered on this animal. It's part of the reason why they freak out all the time. But it is why they sleep all the time, because it's very expensive to be a cat. You have all these sensors, and they're not things you can turn down. And so cats have to sleep a lot because the amount of power it takes to keep all those sensors going is a lot. Okay, well, these two are having a good date without me having any sort of interaction, so I'll just leave them. But I do want to have a little bit of woohoo, so at some point I want to go back to her place. Last one is a pigeon. Pigeon's also really good. Pigeons have these magnets in their brains that allow them to know which way north is all the time. And we have no way of understanding what that is. We have nothing. We have no explicit thing where if you turn around, you're like, that's north. Now, I'm a guy who almost never gets lost, and I can almost always point to north. But at no point do I think, this must be like what a pigeon's like. It just isn't. Come with me. It just isn't, right? Like, a pigeon has an experience that we cannot comprehend. So all of these, though, are simulators. Pigeons know that there is a thing to fly towards. Why? They have to have a simulation in their head about this destination. So what does this have to do with game design? Because I'm looking at the time. So the mind is a simulation machine. That's what we do. And so we have two simulations going on already. We have, let's just get it on. They know each other very well. This isn't supposed to be weird. The designer is simulating reality all the time. These two are gonna have a great time. Speaking of simulating realities. So we got a designer who's simulating reality. We've got a player who's simulating reality, and then we have the simulation itself. So the simulation is a reflection. It's a mirror back to the player. I do things with the simulation, like have these two characters woohoo, and so this mirrors back to me my expectations. So it's a simulation talking to a simulation. But there's a game designer involved, and the game designer is like a blurry lens that's trying to guide the mirror, the simulation, and the simulation. And because of that, woo-hoo, by the way, woo-hoo. And so because of that, the game designer is going to try... No, he just produced some food, some rotten food out of his pocket. Okay, you're going to stretch, but I don't think that's the right move. How about cook together with an actual master chef? Some fish and chips, because she's got fish, as we have established, in her pocket. Speaking of being weird. Yeah, Mistress, it really is. I've not looked deeply into all the woohoo types, but this delivers the concept of woohoo to me very nicely. So what do I mean by this blurry lens between two simulations? Remember, a designer has an experience they wish you to have, and if you do not have it, they have failed. But more importantly, we can really say about it in another way is the designer is trying to get you to think and act in a certain way. And that's the experience they wish you to have. Is he like bouncing? At some point, she still needs to cook. So the designer has an experience. They're trying to get you to think and act in a certain way. But you have your own experiences. In fact, you are filled with emotions of your own and experiences of your own. And so every simulation is a thing you know, and it makes a model out of it. And so because of that, this experience is not exactly like your experiences, but it's recognizable. And that's the blurry lens. So that's why earlier I said it's not necessarily a bad thing for a game designer to have failed, to have given you the experience that they envision, because we simply don't know as game designers what is going on in the player's actual head. They might be feeling pain whenever they see something die because they fought in a war. They might consider it crass and rude to have a character fart on screen. These are all things that you absolutely cannot control. And so the way we manage it as game designers is we try and stay as focused as possible on what is the experience I wish you to have, how do I manage everything to make you have that. And by the way, this whole topic, is how you can judo a player into thinking like the designer wants, is a whole topic. I'm probably going to do a whole topic on it. Yep. Samyamiya, I definitely did. I should have made that part of our socials. Watch an observatory spin erotically. So the beauty of the simulation theory of cognition is it answers so many questions about our executive functions. And some of you heard me talk about that. Without your executive mind, the part that thinks, the part that plans, your body is just fine. Your body is capable of going through life without your executive functions really being part of anything. I'm going to pause and see what's going on here. She's super tired. But let's brighten his day. Kiss and kiss. And then kiss, and then we'll send him home after this. So your body is just fine without the executive function of your brain. It lives your life. It makes the minor decisions that don't require executive function. But you have this executive function. So a big part of what it does is justifying what actually happens, and also trying to understand what you are doing. Weirdly, right? But if you think about it, there's probably a lot of situations in your life where you're like, why did I do this? That's every moment, really, of your executive mind. So it goes on and on, but this is about integrating information of senses and the body, and this is exactly like what we see in The Sims. Oh, get some coffee. Very nice. Because we have memory, which is the maps in your mind that direct your cognition, hearing, seeing, proprioception, nociception. And so this is something we can model. That's an M word, by the way. You'll know why in a bit. So this requires the designer to model a reality that takes into account how memory is made, the executive function of people, and we do that through these muscles, the skeleton, and the skin. Let's see. I'm going to skip some stuff. I'm just going to mention one. So there's a lot of power dynamics stuff here. I don't think I want to go into it, but there is one critical one that is both humorous and obvious once you think about it. So we have a big part of love and a big part of relationships at all with Sims is about resource control. And for the most part, though, it isn't that kind of resource control. It's things like if she goes to the bathroom, then no one else can go to that bathroom for several minutes. So now all of a sudden sim time is broken up by this need to go to the bathroom, but they're passing each other. No, I'm sorry, dude. You can't come hang out. By the way, just like last time when I streamed this, can you see how she just has this never-ending crew trying to hang out, trying to romance her? So lucky her, I guess. And also not lucky her, I guess. Another one is emotional dependency. You can have a sim with low self-esteem, and it requires a sim with a healthy level of self-esteem to kind of buttress them, to say nice things, cheer them up. And that is a lot like real humans, where you have a low self-esteem person and a high self-esteem person who boosts them. Conflict resolution in the case of Sims is you can see that they have strong body language. It's cartoonish, and that's deliberate. All right, Vivian, what's up? Oh, sorry, Vivian. She also has a lot of elderly people who are her friends. I'm just guessing if you've gone to space that this is normal. Body language is a show don't tell about two characters. Are they in conflict? Are they not in conflict? And it goes a lot with the propinquity stuff. Emotional regulation during disagreements. You can see Sims break away from one another. You can see Sims try to calm down, change their state over here on the lower left from like angry to calm, or some other state like relaxed, and that's stuff we do, right? You get angry and two people are together. You can either fight or one of you can walk away and calm down. You can also try to repair things with Sims and in the real world. And a great example with the Sims is you can, if you fail a social interaction like romance, then you get this embarrassed trait on you, and it's pretty damaging, like it should be. But you have methods of repairing. Specifically, you have, like, you can make a self-deprecating joke, and everyone around you will, think more highly of you again, and you lose the embarrassed stuff. So this is all around conflict avoidance, which there is a lot of it. Sims naturally want to avoid conflict, even when an evil Sim, like over there, wants to have a fight. So, we have an evil Sim and a good Sim coming up, the Vitiligo family. Sims have to care about the sort of relationship problems that you and I have. For instance, he just had some woohoo in an observatory. All right, let me tell you a little bit about these two, because I care. Azul and his sister Velmelina, they have vitiligo, and the Vitiligo family. And I always bring this up because I have vitiligo. In every game where I can make characters that have vitiligo, I'm there. I do it every time. I used to counsel people online who had vitiligo because it's a very scary disease. If you are of darker skin, you can see that it can be very obvious. If you have blue skin, it still can be pretty obvious, though you can barely see it. So because of this, vitiligo is a big deal to people who have vitiligo. But it's not a thing most people talk about. In the end, it's representation, and I'm here for it. So these two are a classic example of relationship maintenance, even though they're brother and sister. They have regular interaction requirements in order to keep their relationship going, but they also have to go to work. And so because of that, it's a tension, right? Like, they have to determine. She's evil, by the way. That's why she cackles maniacally sometimes. Dude, you need to serve dinner. And so these guys, these dolls of mine, have to have regular interactions, or else they will hate each other even more because they're good and evil. This guy's very good at cooking. And by the way, there's one more that I think is awesome. That is a relationship satisfaction meter. And you can look at a number, and it is a number. But what you really should do is look at how two Sims look at each other. The emotions or the expressions on their face, if they're in love, is very very different than if they hate each other. It's actually a brilliant bit of animation and art that they've done here in this cartoonish game. I didn't get a chance to, with our Loverboy and Summer Holiday on that weird date, to show you how their faces were very interested in each other. And then after things like that passionate kiss, Vivian is kind of a stalker, by the way. She's actually popped up in everyone's house. I think that there's certain Sims that are just designed to be creepy and weird. So how they look at each other, you can even see it in non-romantic relationships. These two will talk, but because one is evil and one is good, they'll get this debuff on them because they actually hate talking to a good or an evil person. And you can see it on their face. They'll start to become angry-faced, even though all their metrics are really positive. Nonverbal communication. Going to zip through that. I just talked about facial expression. I just talked about body language. The only other thing is proximity dynamics. If two Sims are in the same room, they will approach one another, even if they don't like each other, even if they're not about to talk. And then they normally talk. And that gets us to the bad voice acting section. If you do not like my voice acting, I have very bad news. I'm going to do this. I have no shame. I have no skill. Tonight, we're going to hear a public service message in Simlish. Susu, proposa vartikel, nipsa letters, dufka po shupis, nip staba for Sims, en za never-ending shrim marathon. Staba zi letters, wa zi belong. Za twip fum faza, bigaboo for responsible pool dag. Swimming Wab, steep yipsy peak. Plupul zavartikel, dag. Plupul zavartikel, dufka pul shewis. Stab zi letters. Elwis letters. Plupul zavartikel, susu. Plupul zavartikel, susu. I once delivered a speech in front of a lot of people in Latin, and a lot of Latin I didn't understand, even though I studied Latin in college, and that was easier than Simlish. Good Lord! Please clap. Okay, or banana. I'll take that. Ministress, I actually own the Klingon dictionary, and so if I find a good example of doing so, darn straight I'm going to do some Klingon. Kopla. So it's time for me to bring up the 4 M's. So the only innovation I believe I have ever given to the game design discipline is how to think about anything simulative, or indeed how to think of any game design ever. You use the 4 M's to make sure that you are not doing the wrong thing. Let's talk about it. The 4 M's are metaphor, model, math, metrics. What do we mean? So what is a metaphor? The metaphor is whatever you wish to emulate. The metaphor here is listening to music on the radio. What's that like? So obviously, the metaphor is a smaller thing than the real world thing. Real world listening to the music on a radio has so many things involved that we could never model, and indeed do not wish to model. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, because, by the way, I'm talking about the second thing already. So the question you ask yourself with the metaphor is, what is it that you're trying to emulate? Are you trying to emulate cooking, crafting, relationships? That is your metaphor. One metaphor might be, this is how people fall in love. Another metaphor might be, this is how gardening works. So in order to deliver the metaphor, in order to say, this is what a car is like in a video game, you need a model. You need some sort of structure, some sort of rules. And these rules and model, or these rules that make up the model, the purpose of them is that if you don't choose the right elements of your model, then you are not building your metaphor. And so what will happen is no one will get it. Let's say that your game has the metaphor of campfires keeping you warm. And the model is campfires are 20 miles high and bring Gondor. You know what? I'm going to take a moment and direct control these people. Why is she uncomfortable? Oh, because she just got. She's a hacker. She's a hacker criminal, and apparently in prayer. He, by the way, is he's a comedian. He's a very good comedian too, which is why he has a lot of relationships and a lot of woohoo. By the way, I think real comedians definitely are not that lucky, but it makes sense in the context of this game. Metaphor. What's the thing you're trying to achieve? This is a car. Model. What is the smallest and easiest way for everyone to see that and say, this is a car in the game? So that's your model. How do we play the metaphor? The model then gives you the shape, right? The model says, okay, these are the things that make up your metaphor. And in order to deliver that, yeah, go to bed. I was trying to leave you alone for that reason. But Playful Boy here, let's see what we can do with him. Listen to, we can have him listen to some alternative music if he's going to be here. Okay. In order to deliver your metaphors model, the model within the metaphor, you need math, right? You need numbers. Everything. The computer is a pile of numbers. Relationships in a game are a pile of numbers. Plus 20 for this, plus 10 for that. And so because of this, you need math. And sometimes quite a bit, and sometimes a little bit, and sometimes in my day job, an extreme amount. And that's fine. That's the purpose of math, is you use it to build your model. You can say, okay, every day I lose 2 points of relationship with everyone, but 4 points of relationship with my loved one. I could say, show off work, okay. I could say that when you sleep, you gain 1 energy per second. I can say if you sleep next to a loved one, you get 4 energy per second. And so now we're using math to try and deliver the metaphor in the model. So the model I'm trying to go for is if you love someone and are in a committed relationship, remember the triangle, then sleeping together in a bed is definitely going to give you a more restful and happy sleep than if you are, in a tent in the middle of the wilderness by yourself with bears walking around. So in order to validate your math, which by the way is a pile of stuff, and it should be closely interrelated, and it should be referring to all other systems, because if it isn't, then you've got this weird tumorous thing that's hanging around that isn't part of the body of your game. So in order to evaluate the math, you need metrics, and the metrics, their entire job is to say, is the math producing through its gameplay? Is it delivering the model and the metaphor? And does the model even make sense to the player because of the actions and outcomes and the math involved? Does the player even make sense? Do you have to scrap everything because you feel like you can never have the right math and model to deliver the metaphor? And these are things that happen all the time in game design, and normally we don't refer to it by its proper things because I invented the 4Ms, but they are things that we do as designers all the flippin' time, and that's good. That is actually the healthy, positive work that we could all hope for, because now we know that we're looking for an experience that we want someone else to have, and our tools are this model that we've decided, and the math that defines the model, and then the metrics that allow us to validate if the model is true. In my own work with PyTrap, one of the things I can say is there is a relationship system, and it is built upon values going up and down. I'm not going to say why or how. So I'm only talking about the metrics and not the math or the model or the metaphor. Well, you know the metaphor, which is relationships. The reason why there's a complexity to it is not important here, but there is a complexity to it. It's not so simple as a straightforward game economy of you get a potion of love, and every time you drink it, you get 10 points, and it can never go down. As delightful as that is, a lot of games shouldn't do that if there's a relationship component, obviously. All right, looking at the time, we're actually doing okay. So in the end, you are down in the depths. Metaphor, model, math, metrics. Your metrics, though, decide if your metaphor is even being delivered, or even if the metaphor is deliverable. A great example. I often say, and I actually kind of want to make this game, that you don't really want a game of gardening where you have to worry about the soil composition, its pH, the bacteria that's within it, where the soil horizons are, what the soil is made of. That's not really a useful metaphor, because the model required for that and the math required for that is unlikely to deliver a joyful, exciting, good gameplay experience to the player. And the metrics can probably validate that or not. So resource management, the only thing I'm going to say about that is we've talked a little bit about the time, energy, money optimization, both for the players, or both for the dolls and for me, the doll master, trying to make sure that my time is well spent, their time is optimized in some way, or not, in this case where I'm letting them be autonomous, which apparently just means this guy's going to dance all day. So you know what? You have actual work to do. You need to write you need to write some routines. Stop dancing. Dancing's only for people who have composed their routines. And you need to work on your hacking, lady. Why do I have to tell you to hack? You should want to hack. Hacking is what you do. You're evil. Multi-objective decision making, by the way. There's every sim, every doll has multiple objectives that you want to achieve with them, both their life goals, their aspirations, the muscle, their how you want to manage their traits in your career, and also the skin, the emotions that are pinging off you all the time. So there's multi-objective decision making. This makes the game rich. This gives the game flavor, and it does need to be balanced against the numbers. Hang on, Mistress, I'll answer your question. The numbers involved are more complex. The metrics are having to look at several things in order to see if this is achieved. And this is, by the way, how you get things like I'm still catching up on messages. We can't see you. We can't hear you. So when you have multiple objectives, you're also talking about things that are or are not happening because there's multiple things. And so that leads to players and your dolls having opportunity costs. For instance, I'm having him do his side work, which he probably isn't going to achieve before he has to go to work in 3 minutes. But I'm going to try and do as much of it as possible, which kept him from doing things like maybe eating some foods and stuff like that. These opportunity costs are also on the player. I have to talk for 2 hours, and so I'm not able to work with these characters or work with my dolls, and so because of that, they might do things that I'm going to have to worry about fixing later on. Skip. I've already talked about the toilet thing. So when you think about any game, for instance, the game I'm working on, or I'm not reflected, I'm a vampire, or a game like this, or a game like Among Us, or a game like Dark Souls, always you have to think about what is the definition of casual in that game, and what is the definition of hardcore in that game. So obviously Dark Souls has a very different definition of casual than Among Us or this game. All right, we got some money from hacking. See, this is why you hack, lady. You're the one who's angry all the time. No, oh gosh. Everyone that does this, you are almost done with your job. Just go do your job. So we care about what is hardcore and what is casual within the game. One, for the metrics of the model and the metaphor, but also in order to find the correct audience. Casual simulation lovers love Sims 4. Hardcore simulation lovers love Sims 4. It's one of those lucky ones because it is such a large teetering pile of DLCs and just random stuff that it just naturally, caters to players, and therefore it is considered a very good simulation for that. Oh my goodness! So, Mistress, you asked, is there an ending to this game? No, there is lifespans for your dolls, which almost everyone, including me now, is okay. Which you care about. I have it turned down, but there is a lifespan. There are babies. Babies grow into toddlers. Toddlers grow into children. Children grow into teens. Teens grow into young adults, and then young adults grow into adults, and then you have elders, and then you die. And when you die, you're dead, just like in real life. So, yes, there is an ending in that way, but the general idea, you've seen that whole neighborhood, and you saw that there's a whole desert area with a neighborhood. It's not a thing that you end. It's like a lot of simulations in that you play until you don't want to play anymore, or until you've created kind of that structure that you've been looking for, the stuff I talked about way at the beginning. Let's talk a little bit about technical. Oh, I didn't actually answer this thing. So up. So Azul, he's got a joke at the expense of a friend, but the friend's stopping by. The routine he thinks is going to be crap, but he doesn't want to make his friend mad. So I'm going to take out the joke. He's a nice guy. And his friend is none the wiser. That's what we're shooting for. Okay, so our friend here also needs to reach level 7 of Mischief, which, oh no, it's not that. It's a thing that's easier to make happen on the computer by trolling the internet than what she used to do, which is just run around and harass the heck out of everyone, which is one of her goals anyway. She wants to witness the death of a sim, reach level 8, and have 3 declared enemies, which I've already taken care of. So we have a couple questions here. Is this a sandbox, or is this a linear experience? I mean, it's a sandbox in most people's mind, but in Sims 4, and especially as the genre has moved on, it is becoming more and more linear. It's becoming less and less just this crazy world that does crazy things, and it becomes more things with like quests up here and characters doing, or your dolls doing self-correcting behavior, so they themselves won't go off the rails too much. This is very different than, say, Sims 2, where your Sims could absolutely go off the rails, and it's delightful. Just a quick note on technical implementation. AI, not generative AI, but AI behavior trees, the sorts of things that's in all games like this, are more difficult the more simulation you have. I am so confused by this lady. And it's just a thing you have to account for, because that also means processing power, and it also requires a skillful person. If you recall with Evil Genius 2, their AI programmer just got the Nobel Prize in chemistry. So that's an example of, clearly, that was an AI programmer who had a good sense of how to build the decision trees and the other things. The pathfinding, autonomous navigation. It's a time, resource, effort kind of triangle, right? So sometimes you're like, I want to do this thing, but your sim takes so long to get there, and they have to take a circuitous route, and they may not have whatever it takes to do it anyway. So this is a pretty frequent problem in any game, but definitely in this game. I'm going to tell you to take a shower because you have definitely had that problem before. There's memory and persistence for your Sims. A lot of simulations don't have it as much. In the case of RimWorld, it's very heavy-handed in that there's just these solid numbers and you're told them, and they just kind of persist for a length of time, and there's no like real modification to it. But in this game, it is much more nuanced, even though it's the same basic idea. This an argument causes minus 40 points in regard, but there are many things that modify that, including the phase of the moon for some characters, and so this makes it a not certain thing for the player. At least there's a texture to it, even though everything, the math and the model is all about, or the model and the math is all about this sort of interlocking series of systems I talked about before. If you want a deep simulation, you're going to destroy your CPU. That is Dwarf Fortress. Dwarf Fortress is this insanely deep, insanely rich simulation, but it crushes your CPU if you build it up, and that's why a lot of simulations are actually really lightweight, is because the processing power is more manageable, and stuff that engineering has to do to manage that, and memory allocation and stuff like that is just simpler if you don't have to do nearly so much. Ethics. Is it ethical to simulate a doll? Is it ethical to simulate emotions? Is it ethical for a player to make one suffer? Is it ethical to have one fall in love with two other people? Is it ethical to be bisexual? Is it ethical to be gay? These are all things that are real problems, both for the company that makes these, for the designer who makes these, and also for your players. Again, you can't decide the inner life of your player. Absolutely cannot. On the other hand, and you shouldn't want to, on the other hand, you can say things and you can hope, quote unquote, that they're along for the ride, or even if they don't agree with you, that they are willing to accept it for the purpose of the experience. And this game has a myriad of ways of expressing identity, a culture. There's a ton of cultural food, cultural dress, and so the answer to the question of is it ethical to do X, Y, and Z, The Sims says yes to all of them. And their solution to a lot of the problems of simulations and ethics within a player's mind is to just give a giant palette of representation, of identity, of gameplay. That's why I have 2 dolls with vitiligo. Whew, 10 minutes to go. That segues nicely into cultural impact. So cultural impact is less numeric and more numeric than you think. So what do I mean by cultural impact? I mentioned it, like, is my gender represented? Is my sexuality represented? Is my wealth level represented? If I'm a poor person, should I play a rich person? Can I play a rich person? If I'm a rich person, can I slum it and play a poor person? Cultural norms. Oh, by the way, with the gender and sexuality, can I be something that I'm not? You know, if I'm not gay, can I be gay? Or can I make gay dolls? Cultural norms. This one is kind of lost on a lot of Americans, but The Sims 4 is a great example of a game that is just flippin' baffling to a lot of cultures in this world. Just baffling. And the reason why is they have different cultural norms that's the bedrock that they're on. And frequently it's mentioned, is this wrong? Is this a thing you should protect against? No, but it's good to know. It's good to know if someone is likely to not understand it because of their culture, or have a negative reaction to it because of their culture. It's just important to know and decide how you're going to manage that. For instance, in The Sims 4, everything's represented, so therefore you're either mad at the entire game, or or you are, like most flippant adult human beings, and you understand that there are things that you are not. So the player demographic is what I'm talking about here. So if everyone who plays this game is under 18, there is problematic elements here. If everyone who plays this game is from Dubai, there's problematic elements here. And so you do have to care, and it may influence your design. If you are making the Dubai simulator for whatever reason, then no, you can't use a lot of what this is, because there are aspects of it that do not fit into their cultural schema. And that is a good time. Let's see how much stuff I have after this. Cool, we're almost done. So now it is time for China Miéville. So China Miéville, if you don't know, is an author who invented an entirely new genre of fiction called the New Weird. He wrote a manifesto against J.R.R. Tolkien, it brought tears to my eyes. It was one of the most amazing takedowns I've ever seen. And he is a person of very specific beliefs, and a person who has a wonderful way of presenting beliefs that you may not even know exist. And he does this through fiction in interesting ways. So we've heard about Iron Council. I'm trying to remember the other ones that we've talked about. Iron Council. The last week was Iron Council. This week it's Embassy Town, and it's very relevant to simulation design and the math of simulation design in many ways. Let's get Velmalina working. So what I really wanted to do is have Azul find some love, because it's easy for him. But then I realized, let's try with Velmalina. We haven't tried. So she wants to be mean to someone and listen to Carnival beats, but I'm going to have her pick up the phone. Let's see if we can invite someone on a date. As you can see, she has many, many enemies. But you remember Madeline, who's always getting into our business? She's one of the few people who really like Velmalina. Eliza Pancakes also was approached, and they like each other, but Eliza actually likes her husband. So no bueno on the dating. Jeffrey is the same way. He's the quintessential nice guy, and no one would want to mess with that. But Madeline, she's a little bit of a firecracker, so let's see if she wants to go on a date. There's a good chance it might be no. On the other hand, there's a good chance it might be yes. Okay, that's a no. Oh, she didn't pick up the phone. Oh, because it's late. Never mind. Alrighty. Let's not play video games. You got hacking. Oh, no, you're done with hacking. Okay. Oh, you have to go do crimes. Okay, go do crimes. Crime it up. So in China Miéville's Embassy Town, which, by the way, is his weakest book, he is attacking linguistics. He's attacking reality through linguistics. And specifically, there's this world where language is not just a rigid system. Language defines reality. And, more importantly, these aliens can only talk to themselves in these duos. And so the duos reinforce things. And so they can't even perceive things that they don't have words for. Their reality is literally what they can communicate about. So this fits really well into the metaphor model concept, because they don't have metaphors for almost any part of the human experience. Lying, telling a story, understanding something incorrectly. They can't even understand these things. It doesn't fit into their reality. This has to do with simulation design, don't worry. So the Arakai, that's these aliens, they require two synchronized speakers, which means two synchronized minds. And because of that, the way they talk to each other, the method, is also important, and helps kind of lock down this reality for them that they can't see anything else. So what it makes is an algorithmic life, a mechanistic emotional spectrum with an algorithmic life, like these guys. See, I told you it had to do. I actually worked pretty hard to figure out which of his books would be the right one for this, and then I hit Embassy Town. And I'm like, oh, okay. I just didn't like it. So their emotional spectrum is just mechanical, input, output, just like a sim. Their ability to communicate is very tied to what their emotions are, which are mechanistic, just like a sim. So in the book, the humans they genetically engineered people to be what are called ambassadors, who become one part of this dual language duo, and so they sync up with the Uruk-hai. Now, the important thing here is if we remember our triangle, none of those three things happen, even though we have extreme propinquity. They're inside each other's head, but they do not have an intimacy from it. There is no intimacy from sharing each other's mind. And so that is an interesting factor, because you would expect, this guy, I feel like I'm going to say that all the time. Let's get those routines done. This definitely, oh shoot, I saw it, comedy, compose long routine. Okay. So the ambassadors are synced up. They're intimate, but it's not, there's no pleasure, because that's not in the concept of the Uruk-hai. So just like in Sims 4, their emotions and interactions are calculated, optimized. There's a point system, so to speak. It's not in the book, but you can imagine it just like you can imagine the point system here. In The Sims, love isn't spontaneous. Love is never chaotic. There is no external or internal drive to suddenly become in love, and so it's predictable, right? Like if you flirt with someone, that's 5 romance points. It's not this other non-deterministic thing. And also, first kiss gives you 30. This is a thing that is always true. As long as that person accepts the first kiss, you've got that many points, and it does these things for you. This is exactly how the Uruk-hai work. There's a fixed rate at which things happen based upon their perception of reality. All right. So eventually, these algorithms that are humans, or that are beings, that are intelligent beings, they have this illusion of emotional depth, but they really don't have emotions. Again, exactly like The Sims. They have the illusion of emotions because of math, but they are not. Who's the repair person? I think she is. But they are not. But they're not real, right? Like, it's not a real emotion in the book. It's not a real emotion in The Sims. Now, in the book, it's much more a plot point. In The Sims, it's the reality of love being a number. Eventually, the Uruk-hai learn to lie, because it bleeds through from the humans, despite their efforts, that there are these other parts of reality that they never considered. They learn about lying. They learn about metaphor. And this creates an existential crisis, which brings down their civilization. And this is, if I spent some time thinking about it, this is a thing players can do in The Sims. For instance, and I think Minister mentioned or asked about this earlier, it is possible to have multiple wives. It is possible to have many relationships. It is neither easy nor is the game designed to do it. Specifically, The Sims don't know how to react to a lot of these problems because they're not designed to do that. This is exactly like the Uruk-hai. They weren't designed with a worldview that allowed them to do something outside of their algorithm, outside of these things, taking out garbage, working on a comedy scheme thing. So, if anything is strange that the player does that breaks the simulation, and once again, because I started late, I am going to keep going for a couple more minutes, but we're at the end. If you want to hear me say I love you, we're getting there. You know what? Let's put her to work though. Taking a thoughtful shower, getting some foods in her. She's going to cook together with her master chef brother. And they are going to have some challah. Okay, so in Embassy Town, the break in reality came from something happening outside the established simulation. In Sims 4, you can break the simulation and have Sims not react properly within, with anything, because you have broken the simulation, exactly like the Erikai learning that lying exists. So we have seen that there is a limit to love is a number. There is a limit to anything being a number in a simulation. Just like in Embassy Town, the Erikai hit their limit on their simulation and got broken out of it. All right. We're at the final bit. Development considerations. Player agency versus rich living simulation. I talked about this at the beginning, but this is it. This is the thing. This is the one design challenge. How do you give the player agency versus how do you give them a rich living world that the player can please stop laughing maniacally at the food. So this is the gig, right? Like my username on Blue Sky is Living Worlds. It is the gig, is thinking about how to model the metaphor of a world, and it is the hardest design challenge. I have it all in caps. Technical limitations impact your design. Content gating impacts your design. Monetization, unfortunately, modifies your design, and balancing the complexity. So these are the parts that a designer cares about. These are all the things that's the schema around the designer that allows them to build. Yes, Ministress, do laugh maniacally at food. I've learned to do so. This is the schema that designers have to work within to build a simulation. I'm going to make a note here of the future. There's some things that might be a little bit objectionable to some people, and I want to remind you, I'm not here to advocate for anything. I'm here to talk about what I've seen. I'm here to talk about what I know. And without further ado, AI. And here I am talking about generative AI. While I don't think it is particularly useful, I'm not everyone. And I think that there is a realm in which a generated, say, communication between two Sims, even if it's in Simlish and doesn't mean anything, there's potential there. And whether I think it's good or not, I really don't in the case of a simulation, because we already have what we want, which is a metaphor, a model, and math. We don't really need to add randomly generated narrative. But there is a world for that, perhaps, for some designers. And so I always bring it up that there is potential, especially if we fast forward 10 years into the future and we look at what sort of commercial AI would be available for this sort of thing. Let's not dwell on this. It's a thing. Social simulation depth. So this is a thing that we kind of hit our limit on with current computing. But once we lose our own physical computers and we're all in the cloud, there's a lot of opportunity to use a lot more compute. And is that good? Well, I come from a different generation. Technical capability. So we don't have a lot of people who can be game designers at this level. There are very few people who can concept how to build. Whoops. Yeah. I keep forgetting that's a thing. There are very few people in the industry who can build the sort of AI decision trees that allow this sort of thing to happen. There are very few people in the industry who can design for this. There are very few artists who can kind of grok the panoply of stuff that is needed and how to deliver all of it. And this is not bad. This is not that designers are foolish and engineers don't work hard or whatever. This is limitations we have just on the staffing. And then last but not least, the community. So let's have an example. Let's pretend like I put kumquat people in this game. And kumquat people, their whole thing is they like to bounce around and bounce off other characters. And the entire community might come together and say, what the hell? This is all wrong. And you can even think, but I made this incredible model of kumquat people bouncing off things. It doesn't matter. It's a problem you have. But more importantly, it's an opportunity. Because on the flip side, what if the community had a better opportunity than we currently offer to influence directly the content. And here I'm going UGC plus, because UGC is, of course, the white whale of every game. They want the players to handle the business of the game. We're not really there yet, but I do believe that we're getting there, where players can be partners in the creation of these things. And Bob's your uncle. All right, I'm going to take one moment. A little late now, lady. Okay, he's going to juggle. So before I do the closing ceremonies, good Lord. Before I do the closing ceremonies, I would like to ask if there are any questions, basic questions that anyone would like to ask before I do the closing ceremonies. I only say this because we covered a lot of ground, and I'm curious if there are any questions around it. And if there are not, I will only cry myself to sleep for half the night. I'm going to start the closing ceremonies, and nope, I'm not going to start the closing ceremonies. Let's give you guys a moment. This is the part in a classroom where all the students are looking at each other and they're like, okay, someone has to say something. I'm kidding. You don't have to say anything. But I wanted to give everyone the chance because I have been told that I don't give people a chance to actually ask the one question. But on the other hand, I also am very thirsty and have -10 relationship with my spouse because I'm spending all my time here. So I am going to do the closing ceremonies. Kind of ministress, but not. I just wanted to make sure. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. So I am Sojourner. I do this every Thursday. It's a scripted show every Thursday on behalf and hosted by my employer, PieTrap Studios, on both their Twitch and YouTube. Who is PieTrap? Why am I here every Thursday from 7 to 9? They are an art outsourcing and co-development studio in Seattle. They spun up a game studio recently, and I am their game designer. Our game, Forge Friends, is a game about healthful walking. There's gardening, crafting, and a really friendly fortune teller, in addition to incredible relationships with a number of cool companions. If you just like me, I do 2 streams a week under my nom, the game Cloud Yeller, on Saturdays and Tuesdays from 8 to 10 Pacific. I want to thank Streamlabs and Twitch for making this a rat tangle of tubes and wires and very difficult to stream. It's been a real pleasure, and tonight is the worst of all of it. I want to thank the random viewers here, which you've been through a lot and you've heard a lot, and so thank you for coming. And I want to thank the viewers in the future, 1,000 years from now, who will also be seeing this. All right, you know what I'm going to say. I love you. Be well.